We're sitting down with Klint Rose, Kettering Fairmont, class of 1988. Klint earned a total of 5 varsity letters, including 3 in baseball and 2 in football. He didn't play football until his junior year, but made an immediate impact on the gridiron as a tight end and wide receiver. His senior year, he helped lead the Firebirds to a 7-3 record while setting 3 school receiving records that stood for at least 20 years before being broken, and 1 receiving record, most touchdown receptions in a season with 9, that still stands to this day. Klint was named the Firebirds' most valuable player and was selected first team All-WOL, WOL Offensive Lineman of the Year, and WOL Co-MVP. He was also named to the All-Area team. In baseball, Klint lettered all 3 years as a pitcher and first baseman. He contributed to a 16-10 season his sophomore year and a 17-5 season as a junior, but it was during his senior year that he became one of the most dominant players in the state. The Firebirds finished the season 22-7, advancing to the regional finals, and Klint was the team's top pitcher while batting .458. He was named the Firebirds MVP and received first team All-WOL, All-Area, and All-Ohio honors. Following his graduation from Fairmont, Klint continued his baseball career with 3 years, including a redshirt year at Wright State University, before finishing up with 2 years at Cumberland College, where he earned his degree in business administration. He is currently a supervisor at Iconics and lives in Rogersville, Tennessee. He is married to Kawana and has 4 children, ages 3 to 25. Klint, welcome home.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's really fun for me because I had the pleasure of coaching you as a freshman in baseball at Kettering Junior High.
All right.
So there's some familiarity going in. Let's talk about football first, Klint. Yep. You were a little late to the party as far as football goes, waiting for your junior year to come out, waiting until your junior year to come out. What went into your decision to play after sitting out 9th and 10th grade seasons?
Well, I had played basketball. I was tall but kind of skinny. You know, football roughed me up. I guess I wasn't as tough earlier. So I just stuck with basketball and baseball. And had not an issue, but decided not to play basketball my junior year. And I didn't just want to play one sport, so I thought, might as well go back and play football.
You were an outstanding basketball player, as people who saw you play remember. And so anyhow, I'm sure that was a tough decision.
It was.
Do any highlights stand out from your football career at Fairmont?
Yeah, the first play of my junior year against Alter, Jeff Graham, I'm sure you remember Jeff Graham.
We're going to talk about him a little later, by the way.
Played at Ohio State and then in the NFL, but it was a running play. I was playing tight end. He came up and hit me so hard, knocked me down. My ear pad came loose. You know, if you get an ear pad knocked loose, you got tattooed.
You got your bell rung.
Well, he was standing over me, and I threw up in my mouth. I mean, I know I was concussed, but he's standing there looking at me, and I wasn't about to spit it out, so I had to swallow it. So that was that was my welcome back to football. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anything else in football that jump into your mind? That's a memory that sticks with you for sure.
Yeah. I had a bunch of great memories. I mean, a lot of the people we played against, Kirk Herbstreit, it was awesome to play against him.
What do you remember about Kirk Herbstreit?
I remember we couldn't tackle him. He was a stud. I remember Mike Quinn had him, and he got away, and I remember Mike Quinn getting up and had his shoe and threw his shoe as far as he could throw it. I remember that. But nothing as far as highlights. You know, I wasn't one for stats. I didn't care as long as we won. I do remember we played Wayne, could never beat Wayne. They were just like Centerville. We couldn't beat them. I had an awesome game, 170 some yards, but I fumbled close to the goal line. I remember one of the reporters coming up to me on the field, and I wasn't nice to the guy. I thought, we just lost. I just cost the team the game. I fumbled. Why do you want to talk to me? And that's probably one thing I remember. I don't know why, but yeah.
Team player. It was about the team,
Yes,
not about Klint.
It was about winning.
It was always that way from when I remember you. Now, the two players that you mentioned, Jeff Graham is a familiar name to a lot of people in the Dayton area because he's the head football coach at Trotwood Madison.
Yep, I heard that.
Of course, he went to Alder, played wide receiver and then quarterback his senior year, and went on, was an outstanding receiver at Ohio State, and then went to the NFL where he played for the Steelers and Bears, I think.
Steelers, Bears, yeah.
And then, of course, Kirk Herbstreit, people know that name because he's on ESPN, and he has gone on to a huge career in broadcasting. He played quarterback at Centerville, and went on to Ohio State and played quarterback for the Buckeyes. Anyhow, let's move on to baseball.
Okay.
You made the varsity team as a sophomore.
Yep.
That doesn't happen very often. What was it like to compete with the big boys at such a young age?
It was awesome.
Now, that was when Fairmont was a three-year high school, and the freshmen were back at the junior highs.
Correct. It almost didn't happen. I remember my dad took me out of school one day, and we went fishing up in Fairmont. And I remember Coach Chapman. You know, back then it was just my dad's taking me. Why not? So I remember when I came back the next day, you know, Chapman got in my face, you know, because he liked talking real close. Where were you at yesterday? I was fishing. Why? I didn't think anything about it. And he said, does your dad know? I said, yeah, he took me. And he just shook his head. And I remember going home he said, you just cost yourself a spot on the varsity. I thought, oh, you know, I was expecting on playing JV. But he gave me another shot. So I remember going home and said, hey, Dad, no more fishing trips until baseball's over. But luckily, I did well. We had another sophomore, Brian Rauscher, that played with me.
He also played with you in ninth grade.
Yes. And to be honest, we lit it up. They called us super soft. So we got, there was no animosity from the seniors. You know, they were kind of like us. We just wanted to win, and we were helping them win. So,
any highlights stand out from your baseball career besides the fishing trip?
Yeah, I tell this one all the time. We were fortunate to play against one of the best baseball players that ever lived, in Ken Griffey Jr. When he played at Cincinnati Moeller. We were playing out here. We played him. It was his senior year. I remember I pitched the first game. He didn't have a hit. He about took me out with a line drive up the middle, but didn't have a hit off of me. And I remember his first at bat, the second game, we played him a doubleheader. Chuck Willis was pitching and threw him 3 straight balls. And I was playing first, and I said it pretty loud. I said, come on, Chuck, this guy hadn't had a hit all day. And the next pitch, he hammered one about 450 feet.
Oh, man.
He comes trotting around first, and he smiled. He said something to me. I have no idea what he said. And Chuck looked at me, throw him a strike, huh, Rose? And the next 2 at-bats, he hit one just as far. He had 3 home runs in a row, and that just everybody knew who Ken Griffey Jr. was.
He's in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. He was on the All-Century team, one of the greatest players of all time. Played for the Reds for a little while, but most of his great years were with the Mariners.
But yeah, that was never get to say that, you know, one of the best players ever, and we got to play against him 2 years, and that was awesome.
You also got to play against David Bell.
I did. It's another story. I think David was a little younger. As our senior year, we played him in Cincinnati, and Buddy Bell, his dad was at the game, sitting down the third baseline, and we were on that day. Everybody was on because it was just double after double, and one of the dads was sitting close to Buddy and could hear him say, "Son of a bitch, all these guys do is hit doubles," and we just wore him out that day. So yeah.
Yeah, Buddy, it was a 3-generation family.
Yep.
All of them played for the Reds at one time or another. And I know David didn't play for the Reds, but David Bell, for people that don't follow baseball, is the manager of the Cincinnati
Right.
Reds now.
Right.
His father, Buddy, played third base for the Reds for a while, and his grandfather, Gus, played center field for the Reds
Yep.
back in the day.
Yep.
Anyhow, so you played against, you had some brushes with greatness there. What about other highlights from baseball? Your senior year, you guys went to the regionals.
We did.
Talk about that.
So we had to face Centerville again, which Centerville, I don't know why, growing up, we wore Centerville out, and we get to high school, we can't beat them in anything. So we lost to Centerville in the district, or in tournament play. We played them here, I pitched, and we got beat, I think it was 4 or 5-1, and had to play them again in the tournament. And it was a big deal. We were pumped. I think I had a no-hitter going. I didn't even realize it.
So you pitched that game.
I did. Didn't realize it. I was so focused on it.
I was there. I know
Yeah,
you pitched
yeah.
that game.
But I remember I could not get Herb Street out to save my life. The first game we played him, he had an awesome eye and didn't hit it hard, but every time he swung and hit it, it went somewhere they weren't. So same thing, I couldn't get him out. I finally did. I picked him off first base. That's the only time I got him out in my high school career, but I do remember that. And another thing I remember, Coach, hard with Coach Chapman gone, but he never really seemed like he cared whether we won or not. He was more into it for other reasons, like making sure you're a good person, you graduated from high school. And I remember he came up to me, grabbed me by the face and said, "Thank you." So I knew then how much it meant to him that, not that we won another tournament game, but we finally beat Centerville. So.
Bob Chapman was a great guy.
Yep,
And
sure was.
I had a close relationship with him as well. So I understand you getting emotional. Let's see here. Anything else about baseball that sticks in your mind? So you lost in the regional
we
finals
lost
the
in-
next day or two later?
Yeah, no, we played Centerville early in the tournament because I know I had pitched again down in Cincinnati against, I forget who was it, a team that was loaded. I remember some dads about got in a fight with their coach after the game because they took his son out. But they had some studs. They had a catcher that went to Michigan. They had a couple pitchers that went to well-known D1 schools, and we beat them. I pitched that game. I remember Greg Seacrest hit a home run the first inning, and Chapman again said, there's your one. I said, that's all we need. And luckily we got a couple more runs because I think somebody hit a home run off me, the first home run I'd given up all year. But yeah, so we won that game, and then the regional final game, I think Craig Ritchie pitched a good game.
He was a good pitcher.
I think the final score was 5-1. I remember, I think it was the 6th or 7th inning. Jeff Miller, one of our catchers that has since passed on, hit a line drive in the gap with the bases loaded. If that ball would have got down, it would have been close, and the guy made a diving catch. And but yeah, that was heartbreaking. Especially,
All these names you're throwing at
Yeah.
me are familiar names to me.
Yep. And then what was worse was I started playing on a traveling team in Springfield a couple weeks later, and we were just so happened to drive by where the Columbus Clippers used to play.
Oh, yeah.
and that's where the state tournament was going on.
Oh.
And I lost it, man. Driving down the road, I lost it because we could have been there.
Could have been you.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Came
anyway.
this close.
Yep.
Okay, you were in a class that was full of really good athletes that were really, really tight.
Yep.
There was a tight bond there. So you got to compete with a lot of good friends along the way on the field of play. Talk about that. What was that like?
It was awesome because a lot of them, you know, I can remember going to school with in second, third grade. Craig Ritchie, Chris Griffin, Donnie Repkin, Rob Palvino. You know, we all came up together, and then
Know them all.
and then seventh grade, Brian Coffey came along, and then eighth grade, Johnny Campbell. I know I'm missing some, but you know, we were all best friends. You know, it wasn't somebody, a couple guys would do something here. We hung out at each other's houses. We practiced together, even, you know, not during the season. I remember, man, Brian Coffey, when Desi was still around, we'd go play tennis and basketball, and his dad, rest of the soul, was about 5'6", and he'd be playing tennis against me and Brian, you know, big, huge guys. But we competed, we won together, and like I said earlier, it didn't matter who made the winning shot or who went 4 for 4. We didn't care. We just wanted to win. So we just all clicked.
Those guys were not only great athletes, but they were great kids.
Absolutely.
And if you mentioned every guy that you competed with, that you had that relationship with, we'd be here all afternoon.
Right.
So we're gonna just move on. But they're quality young men and kids that knew how to win. And,
Yep.
and that's an intangible that a lot of good athletes don't really understand what it takes to get over that hump and be a winner.
You know, I think baseball, we had 4 of us that went and played Division I. When I transferred to Cumberland College, NAIA school, I'm going to say that our senior team could have beat every team we beat. That's how talented we were.
Cumberland College.
Yep.
Wow. Yes, I have great memories of that group and the young men in that group. Who are some of the people who influenced you the most as an athlete?
You, for one. I was thinking about this the other day. I didn't really know how to describe it, but I've been in supervision management my whole life, whole career anyways. And I judge how other supervisors do according to, do their good workers like them? Do their bad workers not like them? And I do that because if your bad workers don't like you, that means you're getting held accountable. And your good workers see that and they respect you. With you, I don't remember anybody saying anything negative about you ever. Everybody loved you. They knew where you were coming from. You got respect just because the way you portrayed yourself around everybody. And you know, we knew you had our back, but we also knew you'd rip our hind end if we needed it. So you've always stuck out to me. Mr. Bernie Baruti was, I know this is high school, but he was my 8th grade basketball coach. I have a bunch of stories about him because I don't know the laws on, what's it called? I'm just going to drop it right there.
Corporal punishment?
Yeah, the basketball practices were tough. I remember.
Very physical.
Yes, I remember, you know, during 2 days you're thinking, oh gosh, got to get up. That's how it was that last period before Baruti practice. Gosh, I wouldn't mind staying in this class all day. But he made us better, you know. It was one of those things, if we were in a close game, which didn't happen very often, at halftime, you know, he'd tell you what you were doing wrong, would try to fix it. Well, if we were killing teams, which we were most of the time, it didn't matter if you had 15 points at halftime. He'd rip you a new hind end because he wanted to make you better. And I remember one time we were playing, I think it was Middletown, Fenwick or something, I can't remember. But these guys were like 6'4", 6'5" in the 8th grade. And I remember Broody saying, "All right, Rose, you guys win this game." He didn't think we were going to win. "You guys win this game and I'll leave you alone for the rest of the year." Well, we beat them. And I was
You reneged on that.
Yes, I was so happy to go to practice the next day. And then he started again. I said, "What are you doing?" "You said, I can't let up on you guys. You'll lose every game the rest of the year." Yeah, so I do remember that. And then, of course, Mr. Chapman, he was a guy, he told you that his job wasn't to get you a baseball scholarship. His job was to prepare you for life. And he did. I remember we had a little foreign exchange student named Ray. I can't remember his last name, can't remember where he was from, but he was on the baseball team. Had no business being on the baseball team, but coach had him on the team. And I remember he got hit or got walked and ended up on first base smiling from ear to ear. Took a lead, about a 30-foot lead, and got picked off. It wasn't even close. And I remember, Coach Chapman was legally blind, so he couldn't drive. And sometimes his wife had to work or whatever. He'd walk home, so I'd take him home. And I remember saying, "Coach, what in the world are you doing? He shouldn't be on this team." He said, "Pull over." I said, "What?" "I'm driving my car." "Pull over." So I pulled over. He scooted over, got right next to me. He said, "That kid will remember this the rest of his life. You remember that." Slid back over and said, "You can go." And that's just the kind of guy he was. And I thought, you know what? I felt like an idiot for having that attitude when he's right. That kid's probably telling his, Ray's probably telling his kids, his grandkids that he played American baseball. So
there was always a lesson to be learned with Bob Chapman.
Absolutely.
He was one of a kind.
Yes, sir.
And then in football, you played for Mr. Doug Schmidt.
Coach Schmidt. Coach liked to run the ball. And, of course,
we liked to catch the ball.
Yes. We had a huge offensive line, so I don't blame him. Had fast backs. Robert Sloan could run like the wind. Shep Oyster up front. Just had a huge. I remember sitting in the meetings before the game, and they'd say, "We're going to run this play, we're going to run this play, and if it doesn't work, we're going to run again." I'm thinking, well, I'm glad I showed up. But luckily, thanks to Jeff Hollis, I think he put a bug in Schmidt's ear that, hey, we need to get Rose the ball. Now, most of the time it was because we were losing, but had a quarterback, one of my best friends at the time, Pat Samnich, started as a sophomore, which you never hear of.
Right, especially with Doug Schmidt.
Yes, but Schmidt loved him, and he was a good quarterback, and we had a good chemistry. Something about Pat, every time he'd get so nervous, even his sophomore, junior year, for the first play, we'd all have to huddle around him, and he'd puke on the field. He couldn't. He had to get it out. So, yep.
Sort of a vomit theme going on here.
Yes, there is.
Okay. Let's see. Klint, you and Kawana have 4 kids.
We do.
What would you like your kids to know about you as a high school athlete?
That their dad didn't give up. It was about teamwork. It wasn't about personal accolades. Yeah, it's awesome to look back at what you did all these years later, but it wasn't about that. It's about team and sacrificing, for the good of the team.
Great comments. Okay, one great thing about being a Hall of Famer is that you get to give out advice now.
Yep.
What advice do you have for young high school athletes coming up through Fairmont?
You know, I don't envy them because of all the social media. I think it's easier to be humble when there's not all that social media. I would say be humble. Never forget where you came from. You're one injury away from ending your career. So remember it. Work hard, but have fun while you do it. It's because once it's gone, man, you're going to want it back. So, but I think just be humble. You never know what somebody else is going through. So just be a good person to everybody you meet.
Great advice. You are not only a Hall of Fame athlete, but a Hall of Fame person. It was a blast talking to you.
Yes, sir.
And I hope you have a memorable, wonderful day.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, Clint.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.